8th Doctor TV movie, which means I get to introduce you to the second person who ever signed my inspiration poster. Come, check this out. Okay, here she is, folks. The lovely Miss Daphne Ashbrook, second person to ever sign this poster. Okay, so we got a lot to talk about, so let's get to it. Welcome to the Time Treadmill. I'm Ron, and these are my sweaty thoughts about Doctor Who. Almost exactly 4 years ago, in the spring of 2017, I had my first opportunity to meet some Doctor Who actors in order to sign my inspiration poster. I was only a little ways into this project, and I had just had the poster made, and I was thrilled to discover that Sylvester McCoy was going to be making an appearance at a local comic shop. Now, also with him was Simon Fisher Baker, who shows up in the 11th Doctor era, and Daphne Ashbrook from the 8th Doctor TV movie. And what can I say about the lovely Miss Ashbrook? Certainly, she has been dining out on her one Doctor Who appearance for decades now. She's a regular at Doctor Who conventions, and I'm sure has made a steady stream of income from selling her autographs and whatnot, like any other actors in the series. And I have to give her a ton of credit. At this event, she was the one who came out and was very upbeat and loquacious and got the audience pumped. She was charming and witty and absolutely knew how to work a crowd. Where Simon Fisher Baker was much more reserved and Sylvester McCoy was much more dignified, she was the person who was just so generous and outgoing, and I really, really admire her ability to get the crowd pumped up and just excite everyone who was there. She was lovely to meet, and I can't say enough nice things about her. As for the Doctor Who TV movie, it's worth noting that this went into production on my 28th birthday and less than 80 miles from my home, actually, although I certainly never saw any of it. It was filmed in Vancouver, British Columbia, just north of where I grew up in the beautiful Skagit Valley in Washington State. And it's noteworthy as being one of only 2 Doctor Who stories ever shot entirely on film, the other being Spearhead in Space. And it's the only Doctor Who story filmed entirely on 35mm film. On that count, it looks beautiful, it sounds beautiful, it has a full symphonic score throughout. It's the first Doctor Who story to have a real budget and look like it. And in a great many ways, it's a rousing success. It could have been and almost was a complete disaster. When the notion started rattling around for an American production of Doctor Who, American, filmed in British Columbia, but still American production companies, it was originally being headed by Steven Spielberg at Amblin Entertainment, and it was going to be a complete reboot of the series, not a continuation. And some of the ideas in the initial script were horrifying. The Doctor and the Master were brothers, and their grandfather was going to be a recurring character. There was the entire notion that the Doctor was half human, which unfortunately made it through into the story, and I'll get to that in a second. But there were so many more things that were just complete misfires, just horrible, horrible ideas, and I'm glad they never came to fruition. Ultimately, we got this story where the powers that be initially wanted Tom Baker to lead off the story, him being the most popular Doctor of all time. But the writer and director insisted that it had to be a continuation of the television series, and so they needed Sylvester McCoy, who was absolutely on board. He had sworn to himself that if he was given the chance to do a proper regeneration story, he would do it. And to his credit, and to the writer's credit, he has a significant role in this story. This could easily be broken into a 4-episode, 25-minute episode story, like a traditional Doctor Who TV story. And in that sense, the 7th Doctor is there throughout the first episode of this story, with the regeneration happening at about the 23-minute mark. And that's when we first get to see Paul McGann at what would have been the first big cliffhanger in the story. And so Sylvester McCoy gets huge bonus points for coming back and really being the bridge in continuity that makes this story work. And I'm so glad that the writers had the patience to invest that time at the start of the story and do a proper regeneration story and not just a little pre-credits, oops, he regenerates and here's Paul McGann. On that front, this story works magnificently. And with the Master as a villain, they do a fantastic nod to his previous story, Survival, which I just finished yesterday, but at this point in real time, it had been 6 years since the last appearance. And when we last saw the Master, he had been infected by the Cheetah People virus, and that was given a great nod in the opening credits of this story. I am totally fine with Eric Roberts as the Master. His stealing a new body was perfectly in keeping with the character, and Eric Roberts' portrayal was, I thought, spot on. I thought he made a very good Master. I thought the plot itself fit nicely into Doctor Who canon with 2 minor quibbles, and I'll get to those in a second. But overall, the style, the pacing, this really was substantially better than we ever could have expected. And Paul McGann, had he been given the opportunity, would have been a phenomenal television Doctor. And to his credit, he's gone on to do a great many Big Finish audio stories. He helped carry on the ideal of Doctor Who throughout much of the wilderness years until we got to 2005's revival. And he also happens to be just a heck of a nice guy. I had the good fortune to meet him at one point, although prior to when I had the poster, and so I don't have his autograph. As to the misfires in the story, well, the big one is the whole I'm half human on my mother's side debacle. And that, thankfully, has been completely glossed over and hand-waved away. It's not considered in any way canon. It's been explained away as being a joking offhand comment he made, although there were some elements in the plot having to do with the opening of the Eye of Harmony that were based on having human characters having to look into it, and that has also required a little bit of explaining. But thankfully, that's a plot element that never took hold. And the Eye of Harmony is the other major quibble I have. Placing the Eye of Harmony at the heart of the TARDIS is just wrong. It's just wrong, and I wish they hadn't done it, but they did, and here we are. But aside from those 2 quibbles, the whole story works shockingly well. It is a thoroughly enjoyable story, and even the minor romantic elements introduced between the Doctor and Grace can be explained away as being in the wake of regeneration madness or whatever, and both kissing moments are fairly chaste and spontaneous and not truly romantic, at least not from the Doctor's side. So I can live with that. I'm certainly more comfortable than that than I was with the entire Rose romance between the 9th and 10th Doctors, and oh boy, I'll get there very, very soon. But overall, I give this story a solid B, especially being what was intended to be a backdoor pilot with the intention of bringing on either a series of TV movies or more ideally an ongoing series. It really does work surprisingly well, and for a joint American-British production, I thought they honored the British elements quite well. And I would have been curious to see where this would have gone, although ultimately I'm much happier that the series remained in BBC hands and was eventually resurrected by Russell T Davies, who goes on to just knock it out of the park. So that wraps it up for the entire 8th Doctor era in one day, although I will get to see Paul McGann again in a couple of months, in the Night of the Doctor, but we'll get there when we get there. Tomorrow, before I start the modern series, I have the Richard E. Grant turn as the 9th Doctor in the animated Scream of the Shalka. That should be interesting. I'll see you tomorrow.